The golden question that we have all been asking and wondering since that fourth quarter in Tuscaloosa is Jayden Daniels going to be good to go against Florida?
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, y'all. Thank you for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. You can also check us out on YouTube. Just search Locked On LSU in the search bar. Hit that subscribe button, and you will get notified as soon as episodes of Locked On LSU drop. As I'm looking for my pen. So you want to be notified. You want up-to-the-date information about LSU football that you can only get from Locked On LSU. So be part of the conversation. Come hang out with us on your preferred podcast platform and on YouTube. Golden question of the week since that game in Alabama. Will Jayden Daniels be good to go against Florida? We'll get into that. Today's edition of Locked On LSU is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. We've got some good news and we've got some not so good news. What do we want to start with today? Let's start with the good news because I'm going to Baton Rouge tomorrow and I'm in a good mood and I'm excited. So I'm going to start with good news before we get to bad stuff. The good news, Brian Kelly spoke with the media today after Thursday practice, as he does every week on a Thursday. And, he got to the podium and gave a little very inquisitive, very, that's so Raven having a vision kind of facial expression to the media and said, I knew it. I read your minds. I knew what the first question was going to be. And you know what? Brian Kelly's dad jokes, his corny, dry sense of humor, it grows on me every single day. It really does. I do have to give him that. But essentially he said, I know the first question is going to be about Jayden Daniels and his availability. He said that we've been monitoring him all week. He was back at practice today, and likely we can expect Jayden Daniels on Saturday. He listed Jayden Daniels as probable. And we all collectively, the entire state of Louisiana and all LSU fans across the country and across the globe breathed a sigh of relief that the golden question we all wanted the answer to, the good news that we all hoped and prayed for all week long, Papa Brian delivered. And probable does not mean for sure. Probable does not mean 100%, but probable is the best news that we have really gotten all week long. Now, just to fill everyone in, if you're just joining the show, Jayden Daniels was out for majority of the fourth quarter against Alabama and Tuscaloosa. A late hit, a dirty hit. If any Alabama fans listening, I know that triggers you. So a dirty late hit from Dallas Turner knocked Jayden Daniels out of the game for the remainder of the fourth quarter of the Alabama game last week. He's been in concussion protocol since. He was back. Jayden Daniels was back at practice on Tuesday. Non-contact, just kind of a walkthrough. And Brian Kelly said, we'll keep everyone updated. We'll continue to monitor him over the next few days. And good news on Thursday. Now, another thing that Brian Kelly mentioned was, look, if Jayden Daniels wasn't good to go, if he wasn't physically able to go, if he wasn't mentally able to go, if he didn't feel prepared enough to go, if being in concussion protocol this week left him just feeling not 100% in whatever form or fashion against Florida, Brian Kelly said, look, we weren't going to play him. Now, he's speaking to the media, of course, so I don't know, just keep that in mind. Always take whatever a coach says with a little bit of a grain of salt when you're talking to the media. But I wholeheartedly believe that. Just with the way concussions are handled now and how seriously they're taken now, rightfully so. I mean, head injuries, you don't mess around with those. You don't play with a concussion. If it's a hamstring where the player says, look, I can go, you can probably be a little bit more lenient with that when it comes to a concussion, when it comes with a head injury. And when it came from a hit as brutal as we saw on Saturday night, you don't take that lightly. You don't just say, "Hey, look, you're going to go no matter what. Go, like, good luck." You don't do that. And also what Brian Kelly mentioned was, like, we have a lot of confidence in Garrett Nussmeier, backup quarterback. And I believe that. We've seen limited snaps from Garrett Nussmeier, the rest of the Alabama game. Threw for over 50 yards against Alabama. Wasn't great, but do we expect him to be? He came off the bench cold. Some for a couple of snaps in Missouri. So we really, we as fans don't really have a great evaluation of where Garrett Nussmeier is right now. Like, we know that he's a good backup. We know that he's the quarterback of the future. We know that he's probably the second best backup in the SEC, maybe only behind Max Johnson. We as LSU fans know what Max Johnson is capable of. You can make the argument that Garrett Nussmeier is better than Max Johnson. I'm not getting into this argument, but he's one of the best, if not the best, backup quarterbacks in the SEC. So I think you could feel confident about what Garrett Nussmeier can do. But Garrett Nussmeier is not Jayden Daniels. There's no other quarterback that is as dangerous as Jayden Daniels. There's no other quarterback in all of college football that can do what Jayden Daniels can do. That is what gives us so much faith and hope and trust into Jayden Daniels. That's why, even with 3 losses on the schedule, I still believe he's going to get an invitation to New York City for the Heisman Trophy ceremony, is because he can just do what no other player in the country can do. So, the best news of the day. Brian Kelly says that Jayden Daniels is probable on Saturday against Florida. And another thing here, too, is I still think that you can beat Florida without Jayden Daniels. Florida is a struggling team. Florida's stolen a couple wins here and there. Earlier in the season, they beat a really good Tennessee team. Florida's got 5 wins on the season so far. This is a struggling Florida team that just lost to Arkansas this past week, an Arkansas team that just fired their offensive coordinator. An Arkansas team that only was able to muster up 3 points at home against Mississippi State. So this is a Florida team that I think you can say is probably building for the future. A Florida team that honestly has looked better at times than I expected them to look. Graham Mertz has been a better quarterback than I expected him to be. And we'll do a full Florida preview with the host of Locked On Gators, Brandon Olson, on tomorrow's edition of Locked On LSU. So Florida, I would say good, not great. I don't even really think Florida is that good. They are good at times. They have a really good run game. They have a solid pass defense. And Graham Mertz can make plenty of plays. He's not a quarterback that you can just look past. Not a quarterback you can say, no problem. So this is no disrespect to Florida. I think it's more so of a reflection of where they are as a program right now, as a team more so right now, program building for the future. It's got a lot of youth, a lot of inconsistency on that Florida team. So I don't think that you necessarily need Jayden Daniels against Florida to get a win. But we talked about earlier this week how important a win is, how important winning out the rest of the season is, how important the difference between 9-3 and 8-4 is, how different of a feel that has at the end of the season, how different you can feel about your program if you go 9-3, which LSU would do if they win out. And how different 8-4 feels, how much more disappointing that might feel. And look, 9-3 feels disappointing too. 8-4 is a much different beast. So at least having Jayden Daniels, you'll feel better about being able to secure that win against Florida. And that, again, that's no knock whatsoever to Garrett Nussmeier, but it's Jayden Daniels. You feel better about him suited up and being your quarterback than if he's not. I mentioned we had a little bit of bad news. We will get into the bad news, potentially bad news, coming up next here on Locked On LSU. I want to tell y'all about Jace Case. So we spend a lot of time talking together. You and me, we get fired up together on wins and losses, who starts and who sits. And I am so incredibly thankful for the connection that we have. Today, I want to chat, maybe get a little bit more personal, maybe dig a little bit deeper. I just learned that you can get a 1-year supply on ED medications. You realize what that means. You can be on extended travel. You can bring them on your next natural disaster or supply chain issue. Whether it's you're worried about snow, whether you're worried about cold, whether you're worried about not being able to have access to maybe things that you typically would, Well, Jace Case gives you that peace of mind. You are covered, my friend. You don't have to worry about whether or not you can refill your generics for Cialis or Viagra or any of your other ED prescriptions. This is possible because of our friends over at Jace Medical. So go online right now at jacemedical.com to receive your 12-month supply on your daily medication. Remember to use the promo code LOCKED ON at checkout for a discount as well. So if you or someone that you love would get some peace of mind by having a year's supply of any daily medication, go to jacemedical.com to see if it is offered for you. Remember, use the promo code LOCKED ON for $20 off of your purchase. Again, that is jacemedical.com. All right, thanks again for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And hey, this season, Locked On is kicking up our college football coverage with the Locked On College Football Kickoff Live. So every single Friday, Locked On is going to go live at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central on every Locked On College YouTube channel. College Football Kickoff Live will cover playoff implications, conference rivalry games, and go in depth like only Locked On can, including insight and analysis from our stable of Locked On College hosts covering their team every single day. So check us out, any Locked On College YouTube channel, including Locked On LSU. 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern on Friday. You will not want to miss it. Well, let's get back into it. The good news of the day from Brian Kelly's press conference is that Jayden Daniels will be probable for the game on Saturday. Again, LSU hosting Florida, 6:30 kickoff in Tiger Stadium. Now, there's a little bit of bad news. Brian Kelly spoke with the media today, some more injury updates. For right now, he said that running back Logan Diggs will be questionable on Saturday. When Brian Kelly said it, he was kind of iffy about saying questionable, and I didn't know exactly what that meant. Is that iffy that you don't want to call him questionable because you feel like he's more probable? Is that iffy that you want to call him questionable and maybe he's more doubtful? I don't know. I can't read into that. I don't know what the injury is. All Brian Kelly was really willing to say was that it's an upper body injury, which I cover a good bit of hockey. I do sports talk radio in Nashville, the radio station that I work for, the official radio station of the Nashville Predators. And that's like a hockey thing, lower body, upper body. Whereas maybe in the NFL, you'll say, he's questionable with a broken pinky toe, or he is probable with a strained hamstring. Like, exactly, usually for the most part, what's going on with injuries in the NFL. And it depends on what college football program or coach you're talking about. Sometimes you get a little bit more insight into what those injuries are. But in hockey, it is lower body injury and it is upper body injury. An upper body injury could be sprained wrist. Upper body injury could be broken rib. It could be shoulder. It could be concussion. It could be knocked out tooth. Like, it could be quite literally anything above the waist. So I don't know. It could be any sort of thing. Logan Diggs could be in concussion protocol right along with Jayden Daniels if he wants to classify it as an upper body injury. I don't know. I'm not going to speculate because it could be literally anything. So that's kind of tough for me to speculate if he could play, if he couldn't play. So I'm not going to speculate. Brian Kelly says questionable. I'll say questionable. And if there's an update before Saturday at 6:30 when the ball kicks off in Tiger Stadium, then we'll have updates. But for right now, here's the good and bad thing about it. I'll start with the bad thing this time. We started with the good thing. We'll start with the bad thing this time. The bad thing is Logan Diggs is your leading rusher. The bad thing is Logan Diggs is your workhorse, your go-to running back. Logan Diggs is the go-to guy. Logan Diggs has been, I think Jayden Daniels has been at the forefront of your run game. And it's because obviously he can do absolutely ridiculous things with his legs. He can evade defenders. Like, there was a clip that Michael Cobble of WBRZ that he put out on Twitter of him just breaking an Alabama linebacker's ankles. Like, how many quarterbacks in America do you see that can do that? So obviously, Jayden Daniels is going to be the poster child for the LSU run game. Logan Diggs is the non-quarterback poster child for this LSU run game. An LSU run game that is a foundational piece of this offense. Jayden Daniels or not, this team wants to run the football to set up the pass. That is the ideal LSU football formula to success for this season in this offense is run, lob it downfield to Malik Neighbors, and F it, Brian Thomas or Malik Neighbors will be down there somewhere. So that's the bad news. Is Logan Diggs is your go-to RB1 workhorse back. The good news is you got a lot of running backs. I mean, the good news is that you have a running back room that's probably deeper than any running back room in America. Now, I don't say the deepest because I look at Tennessee and they've got 3 go-to backs that they just rotate and they're constantly fresh. But if you don't have Logan Diggs, then you have a Josh Williams, you have a John Emery, you have a Noah Kane. You can even go to the freshmen and Caleb Jackson and Trey Holly. You've got several other options in the run game. Now, with Logan Diggs being at the forefront of the run game when it's not Jayden Daniels, we really haven't seen as much Josh Williams or Noah Kane or John Emery. That they've been more so your third and short backs or your red zone backs because Logan Diggs has carried the rest of the weight. So this will be interesting. If Logan Diggs can't go. Again, he's questionable. That still leaves room for Logan Diggs to be playing on Saturday. So it'll be interesting to see if you don't have Logan Diggs, which back they go to. I would believe that it's probably Josh Williams because we've probably seen more Josh Williams than we have any other running back that's not named Logan Diggs this season. It'll be interesting, one, to see who they go to. It'll be interesting to see how often they rotate those backs. And it'll be interesting to see, do they use those backs like they use a Logan Diggs? Or are you going to rely a little bit more on the passing game? Interesting to see. So hoping everything's good with Logan Diggs, whether he's good to go on Saturday night. Wish him a quick, speedy, healthy recovery. And something to keep an eye on Saturday is if he's not there, what does this running back room look like? All right, coming up next, I want to get into matchups to watch, keys to victory for LSU, just overall fun tidbits and fun things to look at between this LSU and Florida matchup. We'll get into that coming up now. After I tell you about PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It is the most fun that I have had, winning up to 25 times my money this football season. And now I can play and you can play during basketball season. So finally, basketball season is here, and you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League. So the Specials League is a really fun league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. So for example, LeBron James and Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3 points made and receptions. Super fun and a super fun way to kind of switch things up if maybe you're getting a little bit of football fatigue this time of year, add in a little spice and a little variety with basketball season. And now PrizePicks even offers a reboot policy, one of my favorite things about PrizePicks. So your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy with PrizePicks. All right, LSU taking on the Gators on Saturday night in Death Valley. I'm so excited. I will be there. It is my first game in Baton Rouge this season. I was at the Missouri game in Missouri earlier this season, but making my way back to Baton Rouge this weekend. So very excited. If you see me, say hi. If you want to invite me to your tailgate, please do. We'll be hanging around. Would love to see you. Would love to chat with you. But let's get into a few matchups with this Florida LSU game. This is a game that my goodness, I can't talk. This is a game that LSU should win. I mean, you are a 13.5 point favorite. It is Saturday night in Death Valley, which is we all know it's an inherent advantage. This is a Florida team that's been struggling. This is a Florida team that is ridden with inconsistencies. This is a young and inexperienced Florida team. This is a Florida team that I think is still trying to figure out its identity. This is a Florida team with a quarterback that has been better than advertised in Graham Mertz. I fully expected Graham Mertz to just be like a very much so a non-starter. But he's been pretty solid. He's had his ups and his downs. And I think that that's kind of a microcosm for this Florida team as a whole that has had its peaks and its valleys and its ups and its downs. Its ups against Tennessee, beating Tennessee at home, and then turning around and giving up 300 rushing yards to Ray Davis and Kentucky. It's ups where Graham Mertz threw for over 400 yards against a truly awful South Carolina defense. And then it's valleys when you turn around and lose to a struggling Arkansas team and give up almost 40 points to an Arkansas team that we saw earlier this season, but it's an Arkansas team that just fired its offensive coordinator because it's an Arkansas team that had a first-time play caller at the helm against Florida. And one thing that gives me the most confidence in saying that LSU this is a game that LSU should win, and I'm going to go as far as to say that this is a game that LSU will win. Tomorrow, when we chat with Brandon Olson of Locked On Gators, we will give our official predictions and official score predictions. But little, peek behind the curtain here, little preview. I'm picking LSU to win this game. And one reason why is not just Jayden Daniels, which duh. It's not just this LSU offense, which duh. It's how Florida's offense, you really couldn't have asked for much more from Florida's offense last week, and they still lost against a struggling Arkansas team. Graham Mertz completed 26 of his 42 pass attempts, 282 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Trevor Etienne ran for 80 yards and a touchdown. Trevor Etienne and Montrell Johnson, kind of their 1-2 running back punch. He ran for 35, not a massive day on the ground, but overall, your running backs combined for 115 yards and a touchdown. Graham Mertz passing had a pretty fine day. And it's still, it still wasn't enough. So I get it. LSU's defense is awful. It's terrible. But if Florida's offense has a day like that against Arkansas, which that's not out of the realm of possibility. I would even expect a bigger day offensively from Florida. Let's say you expect an even bigger day like that against Florida. Well, I still feel much better about LSU's offense being able to do more. And this is a Florida run defense that really has been struggling. And has been struggling mightily. It's about middle of the pack in terms of run defense. Now, their pass defense is pretty solid. This is also a Florida team that really struggles on third down. They're converting about 36% of their third downs. Now, LSU is giving up over 50% of third downs in their opponents. So maybe you kind of, average the mean there. Maybe Florida gets a couple of more, and maybe LSU's defense just gets a couple more stops against a struggling third down offense. But overall, this Florida team really is, and I say this, and I know there's probably going to be Florida trolls in the comments. This isn't me intending to be disrespectful. This isn't me trying to dunk on Florida. This is just a fair analysis of a Florida team that has looked good at times and has looked not so good at times. And when they looked good against Arkansas, still wasn't enough. So overall, I think you just need to stick to your identity. It's a Florida run defense that struggled a little bit. That makes me feel a little bit better if Logan Diggs can't go. You can do a little bit more in the run game. This is a pretty good Florida pass defense, but it's going to have its toughest test all season long, going up against Jayden Daniels. And look, I understand Florida's already gone up against Georgia. This is still a tougher test than Carson Beck in that Georgia offense. The other thing here, too, is Florida has found ways to shoot itself in the foot, whether it's special teams woes, which I know we've all been there, whether it's dumb penalties. And it's a young team, so you're going to have penalties here and there. You're going to have dumb mistakes that come from just having youth and inexperience. But you have this game at home and it's at night, it's in Death Valley, it's sold out crowd. You can force a few more penalties. Let them shoot themselves in the foot. Your defense isn't going to get any better. It's not. So you're going to give up points. You're going to give up big chunk plays. You're going to give up a good bit of yards to Florida. You're not going to shut this team out. This offense is too good. That 1-2 punch of Montrell Johnson and Travis Etienne and Ricky Pearsall, who I don't think is getting enough credit for how good of a receiver he is, and Graham Mertz, who has been good. He's been good. He's not elite by any means, but he's been good. So you're going to give up points to a Florida offense that's been pretty good. But this, as long as the LSU offense does its thing and continues to look as elite and dominant and is able to find the end zone as much as they have all season long, then this is a game that LSU should win. Now, last I checked the 13.5-point spread, I wouldn't be surprised to see Florida cover that spread, but I also wouldn't be surprised to see LSU be able to take this one home by a touchdown, if not a little bit more. So things that I am watching, LSU's run game with or without a Logan Diggs. One thing that I'm watching is Graham Mertz against the struggling LSU secondary. Graham Mertz is a quarterback that can take advantage of bad defenses. He threw for over 400 against a really bad South Carolina defense. Now, South Carolina doesn't have the offense that you have, so that's really why they lost that football game. But seeing what Graham Mertz can do against this secondary, it's going to be interesting, especially with the pass catching weapons that Graham Mertz has at his disposal. And also this LSU defensive front against a truly, I don't want to say bad, it's not very good. The Florida offensive line's not very good. Can you get to the quarterback? I said that about Alabama, that they didn't have a very good offensive line. They had a young offensive line that gave up 35 sacks leading into that game. You weren't able to get to Jalen Milroe as much as you should have. Clearly, he ran for 150 yards and 4 touchdowns. Can you do that at home? Can you do that against Graham Mertz? Can you do that against a young and struggling Florida offensive line? Maybe give your defense a little bit more momentum and a little bit more confidence to round out the final 2 games of the season after Florida. We'll see. That's what I'm watching. Full LSU Florida breakdown coming up on tomorrow's edition of Locked On LSU.